Good morning, good evening. Welcome to week 6 of MPAI 600 here at Georgetown University's Applied Intelligence program. I just want to start off with our announcements. Paper 2 is due now, depending on when you're watching this, but I didn't get too many extensions, so if you're actually writing the paper, it's due now. Zoom sessions. First, I think we had some good Zoom session this previous week. I think that the groups did pretty well. Briefing the material. I think there's some improvements for those of you who saw on actually presentation of the material, which I think we can all improve on in one way or another. And you'll see that again in your intelligence communications class as well. If you haven't already, if you're in group 4 and 5, or even if you're not, I do recommend you just go through that free PowerPoint course I assigned, or I just didn't assign, but had as an option, just so you can see what to look for regarding PowerPoint, how to present information, how to make things clear to various audiences. And then our next Zoom session is May 3rd. We're going to go again 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Group 4 and 5 will be briefing, and what we'll do is we'll have them brief a half hour each, and then at 10 o'clock we'll come online and we'll have a job talk for everyone interested in jobs in the federal government or in the intelligence community or the big defense contractors as well. And I'll give you my thoughts on that in that session. So mark your calendars if you can make it, great. And if you can make it, please send me your questions ahead of time so I can give you an answer at the job talk. And then speaking of jobs, DTRA, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, where I worked previously, has a bunch of entry-level positions. They're not really entry-level. They're more internship, paid internship, summer programs for this coming summer. Go on USA Jobs, Google, or just go on the USA Jobs website, type in DTRA. They're really, again, entry-level, below entry-level, I would even say. GS 3 through 7. So it's not something, and it's just a term limited for just a few months. So it's not going to pay you a whole lot, but just like anything else, it gets your foot in the door. So, if you're one of our new students here or fresh out of undergrad, that might be a potential option going forth. And then finally, course evaluations. You'll start getting course evaluations, what you liked about the course, what you didn't like about the course. Please do these. This is a new course, a new program, and we're trying to tailor our program to what students want. So that's the only way we can improve is through the course evaluations. I would also just add that you'll probably have me again in the future, in one way or another, and the only way I can improve so your future learning experience is through the course evaluations. So please do them when they become open. So current events. And obviously, as I'm talking now, what the big current event is Syria and our response action, or the Syrian chemical weapons usage, and then our response action. What I want to actually talk about for current events, though, is why. Why are we engaging in military action to stop Assad right now? And I don't have a full answer for you, but I just want to clarify that with a bit. And before I do that, I just want to warn, if anyone's watching this with little children, I'm not sure you'd be watching this, anyone would be watching this with little children, but forewarned, I'm going to show a couple of graphic pictures here to kind of illustrate my point. So this is obviously, and again, I apologize, but the best way sometimes is we're talking about chemical weapons, and this is the only way to illustrate it. This is why we responded. The use of sarin against children was abhorrent. And sarin is a type of nerve agent that causes this type of what you see here. It also causes that horrible twitching that you might see. You might have seen in some of the photographs that have been going around this past week. And it's horrible. It really, really is horrible, and obviously evoked a response. But this has been going on, chlorine, for quite some time. And that's kids suffered from not nerve agent but chlorine chemical weapons, which causes asphyxiation and certain bad things to happen to your lungs. But that, again, it's been going on regularly for the last 3 or 4 years. But that has not evoked a response. Kids dying from conventional strikes from Russians and the Syrians. That's been going on since the beginning of the Syrian civil war for 7 years. But that didn't evoke a response. So my question is, why? What is it about the sarin, which is in the top left side there, that evokes a response, but chlorine against children doesn't, and conventional bombs and artillery don't? Again, why is that? Is it because chemical weapons? I don't know. Is it kids? So all these involve kids, children, and I can understand why you get involved from a humanitarian perspective to protect children. There's something just instinctual to do that, so I understand that. But far more people have been killed by conventional artillery and bombs, what you see on the lower side, than have been killed by sarin gas. And far more children have died in horrible ways from chlorine, which is what you see in the upper right picture. What is it about sarin? Is it the twitching of kids? And I hate to bring that up, but that's reality. Is it the foaming of the mouth? Is it chemical weapons leave residues for months, years after the fact that maybe conventional weapons don't? Is it because, again, chemical weapons kill maybe 100 kids or 200 kids in this latest attack, vice conventional strikes, which killed 3 kids here, 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 and it's a lot more of a one-off strikes. I don't know. And it's a question that I want you to think about going forward, is why do we respond to certain amounts of imagery and we don't respond to others? Okay, so I just want to review week 5. I think we had some good comments on the EU and the U.S. domestic terrorism threat. Just some points to consider as we go forward. When does radicalization deserve further scrutiny? When does it get monitored more? When do I go across the spectrum of I should go on a list of people that deserve to be monitored further? And that's very uncomfortable in a free country where we're doing that. We're putting people on lists for what they say. So if I say I'm against the Iraq war or against the war against ISIS, and I say that in a public forum, should I be put on a watch list or a list for further scrutiny? What happens if I say, well, we deserve what we get. ISIS deserves what we get or the United States deserves what we get because of our foreign policy, and ISIS is right. If I said that in a public forum, do I deserve further scrutiny? If I watch passive YouTube videos of Anwar al-Awlaki, do I deserve to be put on a list? What about if I like a YouTube video by Anwar al-Awlaki? Do I deserve to be put on a list? What happens if I email him, just like Anwar al-Awlaki, in a chat session? Do I deserve to be on a list? So when do I get put on a list of deserve further scrutiny, deserve to be watch listed, deserve to have surveillance against them? Now, it's easy to do, a lot easier to do when you're talking about ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but now let's throw in things like the alt-right and right-wing nationalists. If I had marched in Charlottesville with tiki torches saying, white power, do I deserve to be monitored by the FBI? Well, I can guarantee you if I was saying the same thing, with an ISIS flag down Charlottesville and saying those things, a lot of people would say, yes, I deserve to be scrutinized. But again, the when does radicalization deserve further scrutiny is a question that unfortunately gets put in the eye of the beholder. And that's not what we want to do, especially if you're a federal official or an official from the FBI or Department of Justice that actually does put people on watch lists. So that's a huge question: is when does radicalization deserve further scrutiny? We talked in the Nidal Hassan case study. They said, "Oh, we should have known about him beforehand." But if you saw that video of Nidal Hassan briefing about suicide bombings in Islamic, he doesn't come across as a jihadist, saliva-dripping jihadist at all. That briefing sounds normal. Certainly be something I wouldn't get up there and say, "Oh, I think you deserve to be, scrutinized by the FBI for this briefing." In the Fort Hood case study, they said you should have known beforehand, and a lot of the Senate committees said that. But again, that was a very difficult thing to look at what he said openly. So what do you do about people on the radar? This came up in the EU counterterrorism video. The people who were involved in the 2015 Baklan theater attacks, they were known. They were known by French authorities. And what we have is that gap that I don't have an answer for, and maybe some of you might have, is somebody is on the radar. They've done extremist things. They've done things that are wrong, but they're not arrestable. Okay? The Nidal Hassan might have fallen into that gap. The Boston Marathon bombers, they might have fallen into that gap too, where you're on the radar, they're even on watch lists, but you can't. There's nothing you can do. The only thing you can do is detain them, but they haven't achieved that level of criminal behavior. So that's the question. And the question mark is, what do you do for people on the radar screen? Do we have the appropriate funding structures and people? We talked about fusion centers. We talked about lack of being able to monitor or surveil people who are on watch lists. We've talked about that in this week. So the question is, do we have the appropriate funding? Do we have enough people? And are the right people talking to each other, whether it's within the federal government or, more importantly, and that doesn't get a lot of scrutiny, vertically between the federal and state and local officials? The DHS fusion centers were supposed to solve some of this, but maybe that's still not happening. That local law enforcement is not sharing information up, and federal law enforcement is not sharing information down. And then, should we just accept this? Low-level attacks, lone wolves. I'm not against that argument, that in a free society, there is only so much you can do to stop lone wolves. If there's large-scale plotting like 9/11, yeah, that's a little bit easier to stop. But if someone, whether it's the Boston Marathon bombers, whether it's Mateen, the Orlando shooter, someone just gets radicalized over the internet and he wants to just pick up a gun and start shooting people, is that something we can stop? Should we just accept there's always going to be low-level attacks like this? We seem to accept as a society that it's okay to have mass shootings. We do. We don't pass any laws, don't control any guns, we don't do things that could stop mass shootings. Should we just accept that in a free society, people are going to engage in this type of violence? People are going to do, roll over people in cars. Is that just the price of being a free society? And I'll let you decide on that. So I think we had good session on week 5. Going into week 6, we look at the criminal intelligence aspects. We'll touch on terrorism again, but this is more deals with issues outside of terrorism. So our program director, Frederick Lemieux, will talk, because this is his bailiwick, his level of expertise in this week. He'll talk about CompStat, which is not a computer program, but it is a criminal a methodology to defeat crime that uses, again, data and metrics and accountability to reduce crimes in certain precincts. And we'll ask the question, does CompStat work? Does it not work? What are the variables that led to the mass decrease in crime that we saw from really the late 70s and 80s into the 1990s that still happens today? So why has crime gone down significantly? And we'll ask again that question, what led to the decline in crime? And then we'll also go into law enforcement technologies. And Emily pointed out that the video on the Boston Marathon is not on YouTube, so I'll send out another copy of it. But what this video shows is, and it's not, it's more forensic investigation techniques, and how technology has led us to be better at, or using whether close camera TVs or biometrics to fight crime and investigate crime. And as a side note, I just saw Vice News, and I don't know if anyone has HBO subscriptions here, but they had a fantastic news piece on Friday about how China uses facial recognition technology to fight crime as well as control their citizens. And so you have the technology perspective, and then you have the civil liberties perspective on, do we want Big Brother using facial identification to do things like match up whether people are on watch lists or are known criminals and monitor them further. It was a fascinating look. I unfortunately, if you don't have HBO, you can't watch it. But I think facial recognition technologies will be the either the game changer or the Big Brother tool that gets used from here on in. So that previews week 6. If there's questions or issues, let me know, and I look forward to your comments on the discussion board.